who in your mind needs to have like the biggest like camp or just needs to see the biggest improvement in their game to kind of help that defense rebound from again another really poor showing last season, or at least early on, and then obviously they cleaned it up a little bit, in those last 8 games or so.
I'm gonna, the big thing is I don't think that this like the Lions went out and replaced the entire secondary, and that was awesome. They needed to do that. They were getting thrown on a lot, and
Sure.
they were very susceptible to that. The other thing that they were susceptible to was the run game, and that's the thing that they really didn't do anything about when in
Hmm.
terms of going out and picking up players. So I'm not going to limit it to just one player. I'm going to limit it to the defensive line has to show up in terms of run stopping. I know Aleem McNeil is lost a lot of weight and he's trying to be a better pass rusher, and that's like awesome. Do that because
Sure.
sacks are awesome and everybody loves them. But I would love to see more focus being put on stopping the run, considering that this team just got ran all over. I mean, they were one of the worst run defenses in the entire NFL last year. So I was hoping that they would do more in the interior line in the draft and in free agency, and they didn't really do that outside of drafting Broderick Martin, who looks like he's going to be more of a project player, somebody who's going to come along slower than you would hope. So I think really that's the thing. The defensive line, linebackers, it's time to work on stopping that run because you're going to be facing a lot of guys who can run the ball very well, and then you also have the quarterbacks who
Yeah.
accounted for 700 rushing yards on the Lions last year. Quarterbacks,
And when you have to play Justin Fields twice a year, like you
right.
can you can kind of almost guarantee that like that's 100 yards likely a game if you don't shore up that defensive line.
Exactly. And they also, right in the beginning of the year, they've got Patrick Mahomes, they've got Geno Smith, they've got Bryce Young coming up who can move on his feet too. You got Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of guys who get
Man,
out of the
yeah.
pocket.
No, that's a really good point, and that's been like the one side of the defense of this. That's one side of the defense that I've been kind of harping on, because while they've done, like you said, they've revamped the secondary, which I'm really happy about. Right, like it seems like Aaron Glenn will have the guys that he needs to be able to play the style of coverage that he wants to play. But at the same time, having all those guys in coverage doesn't really mean a whole lot if your opposing offenses are dealing with, 3rd and 2 and, short yardage, with being able to easily pick up first downs. Like that coverage doesn't really mean a whole lot if they don't shore up that interior defensive line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a super important thing, and it the Lions. They seem to compartmentalize in the offseason on things they want to fix, and this year was the secondary and trying to make the offense more explosive. Yeah, hopefully next year it'll be about stopping the run, but we'll have to see.
I mean, and hopefully it'll be something that they'll be doing out of necessity and not because again they had one of the
Yeah.
worst rushing, defenses in the league.
Right.
Um Broderick Martin is someone that I am very interested in seeing or hearing more about come training camp, because I do think with that size and just again just being able to, if they keep it relatively simple for him where it's like, hey, you are meant to eat up blocks, I almost feel like that's a guy that you almost have to like throw into the fire and just let him learn on the job.
Yeah.
You've already invested a third round pick, so there's already going to be a lot of expectations for him to contribute. I don't know if he's going to necessarily like benefit too much from just simply getting reps in practice. Like I almost feel like you are going to have to like throw him in the middle and have him at least rotate with Isaiah Buggs on a pretty consistent basis, just so he can get used to the NFL game and NFL strength.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt that he's going to make the roster. Obviously, that's next to guaranteed. In case
Hmm.
some sort of freak things happen. But yeah, no, I think he's going to be a big part of their rotation. I think he's definitely going to come out there and he's gonna get chances for sure. If you watch some of his college tape, like he's able to stop the run. He's huge. He's a monster of a man, and he's like a mauler. Like
Yeah.
he's got amazing. He does amazing with his hands. Like he's able to just sumo guys out of the way. So you might see a little bit of pass rush out of him too. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to get a bunch of sacks or anything like that. So don't get excited, everybody. But like anything can help. But I think that yeah, he's going to definitely be a trial by fire guy for sure. Just throw him out there and see if it works.
Yeah, I mean, I it's probably a poor comparison, but I look at what the Lions had with Kirby Joseph, right? They took Kirby in the third round last year, and for a lot of us, we were just like, okay, well, this is a project player, right? He's going
Yep.
to sit behind Tracy, he's going to sit behind Deshaun Elliott, and maybe after Deshaun Elliott leaves in free agency next year, we'll get to see him. And then obviously, like you said, due to injury, we got to see Kirby much earlier. I almost feel, and I think Kirby benefited greatly from that. Obviously, he took his lumps early in the first couple of games, but that confidence slowly built as he was able to, generate turnovers, make plays on the ball. I it may be a little like, wishful thinking, but I kind of have that same feeling about Broderick Martin, where it's like, listen, it might look ugly those first couple games. He might get pancaked a ton, but eventually he's going to like understand how the NFL is played. And I think he can make that adjustment after a few games if they just give him that opportunity to learn on the job.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I think that he's got a little bit longer way than to go than a lot of the other guys being like from Western Kentucky. Not that no
Sure.
disrespect to Western Kentucky and the Hilltoppers, if any of you guys are listening,
Hmm.
but like it's a smaller school. He's not really used to competing with some of the guys who are also going to be in the NFL. So I think it's going to be coming along a little slower than it was for like Kirby Joseph or Malcolm Rodriguez or some of those guys who kind of showed, or James Houston. So, well, I mean, I don't know. James Houston was Jackson State.
I
That's
was gonna say
pretty
Jackson
smart.
Houston was yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, even James Houston had to spend time on the practice squad, but
yeah.
like it does kind of go to show like we always kind of say this. I think as fans in theory that like, hey, these players going against these players will make them better come game time. And at least James Houston at least seems to be very good proof of that. Of like, hey, going against Taylor Decker and Panay Sewell in practice definitely, escalated his or accelerated his development so that when he was finally able to play in that Buffalo game, it really looked confusing to a lot of us. Like, why was this guy on the practice squad? Like, he's doing this way too easy. He's getting after Josh Allen like he's a veteran at this point.
No, I mean, like that was a big surprise. That was even more surprising than Kirby Joseph because the expectation, for James Houston at camp was it was low. He was definitely going to be the project player, and early on it was like, okay, he just does not get it at linebacker. It's just like it's not going to work out for him there. Put him on the practice squad because there's obviously talent there. And once they really saw that he could just be a dynamic pass rusher, especially with the bend that he has to get around guys, like it was perfect for the moment,
Yeah.
and we'll see if he can evolve his game to be able to do a little bit more. But like you got to love when you can find diamonds in the rough like that. And maybe Broderick Martin can be one of those guys. There's clearly something that the Lions see in him that other teams didn't because he was originally mocked to go seventh round, at best. So
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do once he gets on the field.
Speaking of that pass rusher, or speaking of James Houston and just again the D line as a whole, obviously we know like Aiden's got one of those starting edge rushing jobs on lock. I've been of the mindset that like literally it's a round robin. Like you could probably pick a name out of a hat at this point on who starts opposite of him. In your opinion, do you have like a perfect fit? Like, hey, this player would be best to start opposite of Hutch, or do you think it's going to be again like, hey, whoever just wins it in camp is who wins it in camp?
Is it a player that's on the team or a player that they make a move for?
You tell me, like, because I've also had listen, I've made the argument that if there's not a guy on the team, right? If all of these guys are just better like situational pass rushers, I'm a I'm in full like favor of the Lions going out and getting a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, or I mean, it's more of a pipe dream, but if they wanted to trade for Chase Young, I'd be all for it because I just think that like outside of like I'm very high on Josh Pascal,
Yeah.
but like after that, everyone else seems like situational pass rusher to me, and it feels like they're all kind of cut from that same cloth.
Well, in terms of going out to get somebody, I mean, it's Chase Young, obviously. Like, he would
Hmm.
just be such a great fit across from Hutchinson because Chase isn't going to have to be the number one guy here. That Hutch has got that locked down. He's not going to have to worry about all the things he had to worry about with the Commanders. and it's going to take a lot of the stress off him, and I think that'll help open him up to be a better player, and it'll maybe even help him stay healthy too. So
Sure.
whether or not that trade is going to happen, I don't know. I think the Lions should certainly take a look at it, considering that they could get him for a lot cheaper than maybe you think they could. I think he's a third or fourth round draft pick, and Washington would part ways with him, especially since they don't want to have to pay him.
Sure.
But in terms of on the team, you're absolutely right. It's all going to be camp. It's going to be a camp battle to see who's going to take that second spot. Is it going to be Josh Pascal, who showed a lot of good stuff last year and showed that he can be a pass rusher on that edge? Is it going to be Julian Acquire? Is it going to be Romeo Acquire? Both the Acquire guys have some pass rushing ability. I'm still waiting to see something from Julian that I just haven't seen it yet. And I really thought that he was a steal when they were able to get him in the 2020 draft, especially since he was a guy that was mocked to be in the first round before his injury. So that was a huge, huge steal. But he just has not shown it. And then there's Charles Harris. Is Charles Harris going to is he going to be the guy that we thought he was going to be? Or I mean, it's so many questions. I at this point, I'm really interested to see. I think this is the top camp battle to pay attention to, other than the fun kicker camp battle.
Oh yeah, no, obviously like kicker battle takes top priority on everybody's list. Especially when you have one kicker that teases you with a 60-yarder. Well, like now you have everybody's attention.
Right.
But I was the same mindset. Like that pass rushing group, like I said, I'm very high on Josh Pascal because I think we forget he was a second round draft pick. And coming out of Kentucky, there were a lot of things that I liked about Pascal, and especially I loved the idea of pairing him up with Hutch, and the amount of versatility. I know he's not. I am blanking on the Michigan pass rusher that was opposite Hutch.
Ojabo.
Ojabo, right? I know he's not necessarily of the same ilk as far as like athleticism as Ojabo was probably at Michigan, but I just felt that like what Josh Pascal does as a pass rusher could very well like complement Hutch very well to just make his job easier. And I almost still would rather the Lions kind of go that way, like go with the youth movement, go with your younger pass rushers on these early down situations, and then work these veterans in, wherever they kind of, fit in.